Hi everyone, and a huge welcome back to the channel, Romans 9:20. I'm your host, Ronald, and I am so excited to dive into some truly powerful and foundational scriptures with you today. Before we jump in, here's a fun fact. Did you know the name Deuteronomy literally means second law? But it's not a new law. It's more like a passionate, urgent retelling and explanation of the law Moses already gave. Imagine your parents giving you the same rules again, but this time with a whole lot more feeling and why this matters thrown in. Today we're tracking Deuteronomy chapters 7 and 8, two chapters that are absolutely brimming with practical guidance and profound spiritual truth about God's faithfulness and our response to it. These chapters are crucial for understanding the covenant relationship between God and his people, and honestly, they have so much to teach us about how we navigate our lives. At the core of Deuteronomy 7 and 8 are God's covenant faithfulness and his call for Israel's obedience. Chapter 7 focuses on the separation and holiness of Israel, emphasizing why they must completely remove the idolatrous nations from the land. It highlights God's choice of Israel, not because of their greatness, but because of his love and faithfulness promises. In chapter 8 shifts to remembering God's provision and testing in the wilderness, urging Israel not to forget him in their future prosperity. Both chapters powerfully underscore the principle that obedience leads to blessing and disobedience leads to consequences, all rooted in God's character and his desire for a deep relationship with his people. Now let's break down these powerful chapters verse by verse. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 1 to 3. Here, Moses lays out the command to completely drive out the seven nations living in Canaan. Now, God is giving them the land, but they can't coexist with these people. Why? Because these nations practice idolatry and wickedness that would corrupt Israel. It's a call for radical separation to maintain spiritual purity. This isn't just about hate, it's about protecting God's people from spiritual contamination. The seven nations listed did not acknowledge the sovereignty of Yahweh. Moreover, they occupied the land which he had given to his people. Furthermore, they were devotees of other gods whom Yahweh could not tolerate in his presence. Notice verse 2 says, "And when the Lord your God gives you them over to you," not if, but when. By phrasing this with the words when instead of if, God communicated the certainty of Israel's conquest in Canaan. The judgment God called Israel to carry out was unique in the way that it used the people of God as his instrument of judgment. This was a severe judgment, yet within God's right as judge of all the earth. The tribal groups of Canaan were particularly sinful and depraved people whom God literally gave hundreds of years to repent. We see that in Genesis 15, 13 to 16, and again in Deuteronomy 18, 9 to 14, among other passages. It explains the significant spiritual corruption of the Canaanites. Now, such judgment seems harsh to modern readers because it is harsh. Modern readers must recognize that at unique times, God has commanded such judgments. The Canaanites knew the judgment of God was coming against them and were afraid of it. Joshua 2, 9, 11 and 9, 24, 25. They could have acted in faith like Rahab in Joshua 2, or could have surrendered like the Gibeonites in Joshua 9, or they could have left the area. Now, most of the Canaanites did not take any of these three options, and those who remained fell under the judgment of God. Radical, complete destruction was important because of the depraved nature of worship of the Canaanites, who worshipped male and female gods of sex, who presented their children for human sacrifice. Verses 4 to 6. If Israel allowed these nations to remain, they would lead Israel away from God to worship false gods. God specifically called Israel a holy people and a treasured possession. He chose them not because they were bigger or better than any other nation, but because he loved them and wanted to keep promises to their ancestors. This is huge. It's about God's undeserved favor, grace. And we see in verses 7 to 11, Moses reiterates that Israel wasn't chosen for size or power. In fact, they were the fewest of all the peoples. The election was purely an act of God's love and faithfulness to the covenant that he had made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In verses 12 to 16, here's the beautiful promise. If Israel listens to these commands and faithfully obeys them, God will keep a covenant of love with them. He will bless them abundantly with children and crops and livestock. He will protect them from sickness and make them fruitful, while their enemies will be defeated. This isn't just a vague promise, it's specific and practical. It paints a picture of a flourishing, healthy nation. Verses 17 to 21, Moses addresses the very real fear, the sheer number and strength of the nations that they were about to dispossess. He tells them, do not be afraid of them. Why? Because God is with them. He reminds them of all the amazing things that God did for them in Egypt, the plagues, the mighty hand, the outstretched arm. God will do the same for the enemies in Canaan. Now, the message is clear. God fights their battles. Verses 22 to 26, God won't drive out all the nations at once, but little by little so that the land doesn't become wild and unmanageable. This shows God's wisdom and care for the practical needs of people. But the command about destroying idols, it's absolute. They are not to desire their silver or gold from the idols, lest it becomes a snare. Everything associated with idolatry is to be utterly detestable. This isn't just about not worshiping idols, but about not even being tempted by their remnant. It's a call to spiritual purity in every way. Chapter 8, verses 1 to 6, the chapter shifts to a powerful reminder of the wilderness journey. Now, Moses urges them to observe all the commandments so that they may live and increase and enter the land. He emphasizes that God led them through the wilderness for 40 years to humble them and test them to know what was in their hearts, whether they would keep his commandments or not. It wasn't about punishment, but about refining them, teaching them to depend on him, and showing them that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. This is a foundational truth. God provided their clothes. Their feet didn't swell. He disciplined them like a father disciplines a son. In verses 7 to 11, now the promise of the land is highlighted. It's not just a land, but a good land. A land where they won't lack anything, where the stones are iron and they can dig copper from the hills. This is a land of abundance. And when they eat and are satisfied, they are commanded to praise the Lord. This is the crucial instruction. Remember God in prosperity. Verses 11 to 14, this is the warning section, and it's incredibly relevant to us today. Moses warns them sternly, be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God by failing to observe his commands, his ordinances, and his decrees. He foresees a time when they are prosperous and their houses are built, livestock and silver and gold multiply, and their hearts become proud. In their pride, they might forget the Lord who brought them out of the slavery. This is a human tendency we all face. In verses 15 to 18, Moses reminds them again of the wilderness, the fiery snakes and scorpions, and the thirsty land where God provided water from the rock and manna, which their ancestors had never known. Why? To humble them and to test them so that in the end he might do them good. The core message, do not say in your heart, my power and strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. Instead, remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. This is a powerful reminder that all blessings come from God. In verses 19 and 20, the warning culminates here. If they ever forget the Lord and follow other gods, serving and worshiping them, they will surely be destroyed, just like the nations the Lord is driving out before them. Their destruction will be a direct consequence of not obeying the voice of the Lord their God. This isn't a threat, it's a statement of inevitable spiritual law. Separating from the source of life leads to ruin. Let me say that again. Separating from the source of life leads to ruin. The essential message of Deuteronomy 7 and 8 is clear. God's faithfulness is the foundation of our blessing, and our obedience is the key to experiencing and maintaining those blessings. He chooses us not because of our merit, but because of love. He tests us not to harm us, but to humble us and to teach us to depend on him. And when we prosper, we must never forget that all good things come from him. So how does it apply to our modern society today? Well, first, spiritual purity. Just like Israel had to remove idolatrous influences, we need to be more vigilant about what we allow into our lives that might pull us away from God. This isn't about physical removal, but spiritual discernment. Now, what are the idols of our day? Well, money, success, entertainment, social media fame, anything that can suddenly creep in and take God's place in our hearts. Deuteronomy 7 reminds us to guard our hearts fiercely. Number 2, remembering God in prosperity. Deuteronomy 8 is a powerful antidote to modern materialism and self-reliance. In our comfortable technological world, it's so easy to forget God. We might attribute our success to our hard work, intelligence, or good fortune, completely forgetting that every breath, every opportunity, every ability comes from him. This chapter calls us to radical gratitude and humility, reminding us that true prosperity is found in our relationship with God, not just our bank accounts. 3, trust in God in trials. The wilderness experience is a powerful metaphor for our own struggles. When we face challenges, it's not always punishment. Often it's God's way of testing our faith, refining our character, and teaching us to rely on Him more deeply. Just as He provided manna and water in the desert, He will provide for us through our difficulties. And number 4, covenant relationship. These chapters highlight God's desire for a deep, loving relationship with His people. He's not a distant deity, but a God who makes promises and keeps them. This should encourage us to pursue Him, knowing that He is faithful even when we are not. Now, understanding these principles helps us navigate the complexities of modern life with a firm foundation. He reminds us that true security and fulfillment aren't found in what we have, but in who we know, the faithful God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who continues to be our God today. Wow, what incredible truth! I hope this breakdown of Deuteronomy 7 and 8 this way has given you a deeper understanding of God's heart and His timeless principles. Thank you so very much for joining me today. And if you found any part of this video helpful or encouraging, please give it a big thumbs up. It really helps spread the message. Share it with your friends, family, or anyone that you think might benefit from these insights. And as always, I love hearing from you, so leave your comments or questions below. Let me know what verse resonates most with you. And join me next time as we continue our journey through the amazing book of Deuteronomy. So until then, keep seeking Him, keep growing in His Word, and remember to subscribe to Romans 9:20 so that you don't miss the next video. God bless you all, and I'll see you on the next one.